Hey guys, this is going to be a really quick tutorial on how to dynamically add table rows to a Google Docs template and then replace those placeholders with actual data or information that you want to add. So we're going to start with something like this, which is a very bare bones template placeholder type of document. And then we're going to add in the placeholder fields and add in new rows. And then finally, we're going to replace those, right? So I'll be focusing on how to get to this stage, right? Because replacing those rows with information is pretty straightforward. So first of all, you need to know what you are going to add into your template in terms of the placeholders, right? So for example, here, I would need to know whether I'm adding in housing. I need to know whether I'm adding in retail or whatnot, right? And that's going to come from some other source of data or some other initial information that you're going to process into a format that will tell you whether you're going to add those rows or not in an if statement. So for example, here in this statement, you can see I'm just referencing a previous node that has some kind of join of all of the pieces of information. And if that information is present, then I'm going to be adding it to the documentation, right? So inside this Google Docs node, you can see that we're getting the document, and what we want to focus on is this part, the rows that we want to insert, and then also the text that we want to insert into the row that we create, right? So I highly recommend doing this in n8n instead of make.com, because in make.com there is no node for that, and so you have to use an HTTP request. So if you look at the Google Docs inside make.com, oh, what's happened here? I think it is not connected. Reload. Okay, while that loads, essentially in make.com, there's no node like this with this setup. And what you have to do is use an HTTP request. What you can do is go to the Google Workspace documentation and look for insert table row request. So you use this, and this is essentially the same thing as this first one. And then here you can use insert text, I believe. Insert text request over here. You'll basically be inserting the information into the table itself. So there's several steps. And then in terms of the actual HTTP request itself, you'll need to use this one. Where is it? Over here. So you'll need to put that into the URL document ID. And then you can see it has this format for the body, right? So the request section, this object request, will be this, either the insert text one or the insert table rows, which was over here, like this. So it'll be a little bit more complicated, so it's just easier to do in n8n if you don't want to make all those HTTP requests. So let's go through how this works, right? So you can see you can insert an object, and there's a lot of different types of object, but in this case, we are looking to insert a table row so that we can then put in this placeholder text so that we can then replace it later, right? So first of all, we need to insert a table row, then we need to insert the text, okay? So first, insert the table row. So we select table row as the object, action insert segment body. So there's basically header, body, footer, and most of the times we're going to be putting things in the body, right? And you can choose before or after the index, and I'll explain what the index is in a second, right? And then you have to put in the index, and then the row index will be like the number, the index of the row inside the table that you're inserting. So it starts at 0 for the header of the table, and then 1 for the next row, and then 2 for the third row, and so on and so forth. And same thing for the columns. And if you're inserting like into an existing table, you can just put the columns as 0, and then it'll just have the same number of columns as what's already there. So for example, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 columns here, and if you put that as 0, it'll just put 6 columns when you insert the row. Okay, so for the index, this is a little bit complicated. It's quite difficult to find, and so I think what's easiest is probably starting with the number of characters that you have in the template so far. So let's say you make this template, right? And you want to insert a row over here, like just above this. There's a placeholder table here, and you want to insert a row just above this blank row. What you can do is you select everything here and see how many characters there are. So the index is basically the number of characters, but with a little bit of like you have to take into account the new line characters and things like that as well. So you can see there's 278 characters here, and you can use that as a starting point. So come over here, and then in the index you would plug in 278, and then you would just try to insert something. Like you would execute this step and try to insert something and see where it shows up actually, because it might not be where you think it is, because you have to account for all of the hidden characters as well. So like new line characters, when you add in a table, there's a certain number of characters that are added as well, and things like that. So what you count in terms of the number of characters might not be the actual index itself. And I can't actually find a way to get the actual index reliably aside from using a Google app script, which is a little bit annoying. So I feel like this is faster. You can just like plug in a piece of text at a particular index, and then see what position it is, and then adjust it like just by trial and error. It only takes like 2 minutes or so to do it that way. Okay, so let's say you've created the table row now, and you want to insert some text, right? So if we're inserting text, in order to keep the index consistent, so for example, if I insert some information here, and we add another row, right? But then if I wanted to add something below this, the index would be different. So like, let's say this index here is 246, right? And we add some information, and then we want to create the next row, right? So if we created a row below, this would no longer be index 246 because there's some kind of variable amount of information in here. Like this could be A, or it could be like AASDF, and that would result in this index number being different, right? So you actually have to create the table backwards. So we want to add in the last row first, then the second last row, then the third last row, so that the index that we're adding in always stays the same. So for example, if this is ABC, let's say that's the last row, then we want to insert one row above. So then this index where we're inserting the row actually stays the same. It'll stay as 246 if that's the index. And then we can do like ACD instead. And if we insert the row above, this will still be index 246, right? So the index stays the same. And so you can build the table kind of backwards. And when we want to add in the text to be replaced, then we need to figure out the indexes again, right? So this is a little bit tedious because of the index thing, but it's definitely functional, and it definitely works, right? So it'll take a little bit of time, but you can kind of figure it out. Yeah, so basically here we insert the text in the body, and then again add an index, and then for the index you'll need to figure out what the index is for each cell. Typically there's like +2 index between each cell instead of +1. So for example, let's say this was where the cursor is at index 1 right now. So then after the A character, that would be index 2. But then when we reach here, it would probably be index 4. So there's like a jump of 2 between the cells instead of 1. So that's something to keep in mind. Yeah, and aside from that, you would build this out like this. You can see for every cell that you want to replace, you'll need to have one of these placeholders. And then after that, you can then replace the placeholders with the actual information, which I don't have in this workflow because I just pulled this out. But that's pretty straightforward. All you would do is use a Google Docs node, and you actually would do something like text, find and replace text, and then you put the old text, like for example, housing. Sorry, I have too much stuff open. but you would put the placeholder text and then whatever new text, right, based on your data or whatnot that you want to replace. So that's pretty much it. Yeah, again, looks like I got signed out of Make, but I would recommend doing it in n8n because it's much more complicated to do it with Make. Not that you can't, but yeah, it's just easier. Okay, I think that's pretty much everything. If you have any questions, just feel free to let me know. I'll link to make.com documentation in the bottom so it's a little bit easier to find. But yeah, that's all. Thanks.